Alright, getting ready to begin here, and we'll begin in just a minute or less. Okay, good morning, this is Tim Elder with the King's Report. This is the King's Report for the 29th day of the 6th month in the 16th year of Changi, and I'm sitting in for the second king of Changi, and this is Wednesday. And first I need to apologize. Today I'm doing the tech and the reporting on my own. And the last time I did this, I forgot to unclick the box that says mirror my screen. And so because I failed to unclick that box, everything was backwards. And today I unclicked it. So I think everything should be correct today. So when I have a tech team, then I have to reverse everything on my side so that it gets unreversed by the tech team. But when I don't have a tech team, I need to unreverse stuff here, otherwise things get reversed on your screen. Why did they do it that way? I don't know. Whoever developed these streaming softwares obviously wanted to, I don't know, I think they're trolling us or something. Anyway, I don't know why they made it that way, but anyway, they did. So today we are going through the speech by Father in January 1973 on the change of blood lineage, and this is the 8th week that we are doing this. And last week I went through the first 7 editions, and then I put the previous links to the previous broadcasts in each of them. And so if you go to part 7, you'll see the links in the description below. You'll see the links to parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if you go to 6, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. I hope that will maybe help you get the whole picture of this series. Anyway, so today is the 8th in the series on Father's three speech series that he gave in January 1973, which was titled The Change of Blood Lineage. So let's pick up where we left off last time, and we're going to begin with these. I guess I have to share it, don't I? Okay, so much to keep in mind. Okay, all right. Okay, so last time we ended with this paragraph here, and here in this paragraph, Father was talking about cutting away the satanic world, right? And I was talking about how we did some drastic things in that respect back in the day. You know, we were living in communal sort of atmosphere or communal environment. There was a building, usually a large residential building, where you could have 10, 20 people living and sleeping and eating and so forth. And that changed really in the early 1980s, especially I think with the beginning of the Washington Times in 1982. The Unification Church members who were assigned to that project very quickly saved up enough money to put down some down payments on their homes, and so they started living in their own homes. And that was really, especially the 1982 blessing of 2,075 couples in Madison Square Garden. Also, then people had husbands and wives, and soon after that they had children, and so forth. And so it was really during the 70s that we were living in that communal situation, and that changed very much in the 1980s. And perhaps not coincidentally, the witnessing results went down when people started living separately in their own homes instead of in the communal situation. But anyway, that's part of the history that I think probably someone is going to write. All right, so here he was talking about how Jesus was going to explain at that point to people when he wanted them to deny their lives in order to join him. He wanted, in other words, like Peter did. Jesus said, I'll make you fishers of men, and he dropped his fishing net and followed. He cut away with his previous life. He said these things only in parables and in symbols because there were Satans all around him. He said he came not to bring peace to the world, but to bring the sword. Then it was only too natural for him to arouse controversy. Okay, yes. So he was not a sort of a feminine guy, was he? He was very much a masculine alpha male. Talk about Jesus there. And it's interesting that when you follow True Father, when you study True Father, you find yourself understanding Jesus much more clearly. And this, of course, not coincidental. So anyway, all right. So this is where we begin today's discussion. And sending you out of your own country to come to the U.S., your physical parents may have thought that you were going to have wealth and glory. So he's talking to a group of Europeans here who were brought over from various countries in Europe, Germany, France, England, UK, Italy, and other countries. And so he's talking about how he has brought them out of their own country. For that reason, they let you alone. But if you were going to the African jungles or to the mountains, would they have let you go? You must be grateful that, here again we see the word master. This is 1973, and it's the word that they're translating. Your father generally referred to himself as Sonseng Nim, which would generally translate as teacher, and I've suggested that we should translate master as Lord, but I think in this context probably teacher would be the way that he would be closest to what he was saying. I don't have the Korean version of this speech, so I cannot say for sure what he said, but having studied a great many of Father's speeches, I think probably he said Sonseng Nim here. You must be grateful that, well, let's just go ahead and say True Father. It's here calling you here so that you have not been faced with so much objection. You must know that True Father has gone through a lifetime of difficulty and hardship in order to bring this day. Are you grateful to me or not? The answer is simple. If you join the efforts with True Father in utter obedience to him, you have already gained the family level of restoration. Okay, so this is Father talking about himself, kind of in the third person. And I mentioned that one situation where I got an email from someone who said who was all in a panic because they were reading Father's words, and it sounded to them as Father was talking about talking in a way that he was not the Messiah, that the Messiah was going to come at some point in the future. And I explained before that this is actually one of the sort of kind of a rhetorical tool that Father would often use, especially up to the point where he actually declared or announced himself as the Messiah in the 1990s. But this is 1970s. This is more than 25 years before that happened. So we don't need to be, all in a panic that Father's calling himself something other than True Father actually here, whether it's master or teacher or whatever. He wanted us to come to our own conclusion that he is the Messiah, that he is the true parent. Recently, I was talking to a young woman who was in the Family Federation, and I've known her for quite a long time. And I guess I probably first met her when she was about 10 years old, and she's about 40 or so now. Well, from my perspective, that's young. Okay. And I was pressing her like I've never pressed her before, but I was pressing her this time about her reasons for not following True Father and not following the person who was or not working with the person who was designated by Father as his heir and successor. In other words, not working with the second king. And at one point she said, well, I have my faith of 30 years. She's actually 40 years old, so I'm not sure exactly what she meant by 30 years, but I guess it was when she was 10 years old that she made a decision to follow true parents. She says, I have my faith of 30 years. Later I got to thinking about that, and I thought to myself, well, wait a second. She had her faith for 30 years, and yet today she's not following the person that Father designated as his heir and successor. She's also following a person who has betrayed Father and who is changing things that Father said do not change. So what exactly is her faith? And I realized that I'll have to ask her the next time I see her, next time I talk to her, but I think probably the answer is that her faith is in true parents. In other words, I believe true parents. I follow true parents. But not the principle. Not the principle. And I think this is how she can justify doing what she's doing today. She's maybe very ignorant of the principle. And by the way, Hak Ja Han herself is very ignorant of the principle. She has never studied the principle. Hak Ja Han has never studied the principle. This I know from her own testimony. Because she says that God taught it to her directly, just the whole knowledge of the principle just sort of whoosh, just sort of, I don't know exactly, but sort of something came into her brain. In other words, she knows it from the time of her birth. She knows the principle without having to study it, without having to put in any effort at all, without any kind of 5% or any nonsense like that. Right? And so the result is she does not know the principle. And also, the people who follow her, maybe there are two types. Maybe there are those who know the principle but are choosing to ignore it because of power and money. But I think in the case of this young lady, she just does not know the principle. She does not know that Father's teaching states clearly that the Messiah must be a man. That God, we refer to God as Father. And the whole, and everything else. Of course, they know certain words. Like Hak Ja Han, for example, she knows the word indemnity, okay? And when I met her directly, and I think I've talked about that before, when I had my experience with sort of a one-on-one experience with Hak Ja Han on November 15th, 2012, exactly 2 months after Father's Somwa ceremony. That was when she called me to the palace. She called me personally to the palace. And of course, I've talked before about how that turned into a shouting match. And it wasn't clear to me why she had called me to the palace until the very end, where she said, "Oh, I was going to have you deliver a message to Kukjinim, and I wanted you to deliver a message about indemnity." So from that, I know she knows the word indemnity, but I don't think she understands what that actually means. Anyway, I did not. She gave up. She at the end of that conversation, she just said, "Oh, it's no use talking to you," and got up and left the room. So I don't know exactly what it was that she wanted me to convey to Kuchini. But I mean, come on, a mother wants to talk to her son, right? And she has to call in somebody else. Pick up the expletive phone. Okay. Anyway, so people don't know the principle. And so I think that's why it's important for people to study speeches like this. Father speaking about lineage. And people fall into the trap where they're thinking, okay, it's enough for me to just believe in Father. This is kind of a Protestant evangelical thing, isn't it? Well, you just have to believe in Jesus, that's all. You just have to believe in Jesus. Just believe in the salvation by His blood, and you'll go to heaven. But one professor that we had at UTS when I was there commented that one of the sort of the unique aspects of the Unification Church is that it requires its members to have a much deeper understanding of the theology than other Christian communities do. If you think about Catholics or Lutherans, and many people, for example, if you ask them, well, why are you a Catholic? Well, I'm a Catholic because my parents were Catholics and their parents were Catholics. When I was working at the foundation here in Seoul, that was many years ago now. I resigned in 2013, but when I was there was a guy there who was a Christian. He was working as an in-house lawyer, and one day, I guess, I think I asked him or somebody else asked him, why don't you join the Unification Church? And he says, well, I can't because I'm a third generation Christian. To which I said, well, excuse me, I'm a 10th generation Christian. I don't know if I'm actually 10th generation. I cannot trace my family back 10 years. But point is, though, that in Korea, third generation Christian, if your grandparents were Christian, that means that you are really core. You are really, your family is absolutely perhaps one of the first families to accept Christianity in Korea. But when you compare that with Christians outside of Korea, third generation is really not very much. But he said, I cannot become Unification Church member because I'm third generation Christian. Of course, actually, you should become a Unification Church member because you are a third generation Christian. But anyway, that's neither here nor there now. Okay. So, yes. So, Father really wanted us to know the principle, and so he talked to us about the principle. He talked to us about change of blood lineage and so forth. He did not just say, believe me. He did not simply say, whosoever believeth in me, right? There is no John 3:16 in our church. Whosoever believeth in me shall have eternal life. No. You gotta understand why you believe. What you believe. Because otherwise, if you're just following the person, true parents, then what happens? Well, we see it today. We see thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, who have gone off course because they say, oh, we gotta just follow true mother. But if she is obviously betraying Father, they say, oh yeah, but we still have to follow true mother. And it's very sad. It's very, very sad. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's get back here. You must know that true Father has gone through the lifetime of difficulty and hardship in order to bring this day. So anyway, my point was that Father wanted us to come to our own conclusion that He is the Messiah, that He is the true parent. And I think a second generation deserve that opportunity as well. Right? And suggestion. I think it may be a good idea for, suggestion, all right? Suggestion. I think it may be a good idea for a second generation to attend traditional Christian churches. And find out what they believe. Okay. Go, attend Sunday school. First of all, they'll learn the Bible much better than they are now. I think many of our second generation don't know the Bible. Or they only know the Bible in terms of the verses that are mentioned in the divine principle. But really they need a much broader experience with the Bible in order to understand Father's teachings. Anyway, so just my suggestion. Okay. All right, so let's focus here. Are you grateful to me or not? The answer is simple. If you join in the efforts with Master in utter obedience to him, you've already gained the family level of restoration. By engulfing yourself, you have already become one with him and gone beyond the level of family and nation and are entering your work in the worldwide level. So Father did not, I keep getting distracted, don't I? But again, I want to make the point that Father did not simply sit on a throne and give out orders. You know, if you would think that maybe if the Messiah, maybe, you know, King of Kings and all that, he just sat on his throne and say, okay, go fundraising, okay, go witnessing, this kind of thing. But no, he would stand in front of us and he would speak for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Why? 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 Because he wanted us to understand the truth that God was revealing to us through him, to understand it. So it's that understanding that arms us against the attacks by the satanic world. Let's see here. So if you have restored one nation with him, then all other nations are on the same level, in a position to be engrafted by him. That would make things easier. Even presidents of countries could come to our ideology and our true Father. In the long run, after a while, we will be able to engraft all the people overnight. We will have restored all the nations and influenced the entire political world. At that point, we will be able to amend laws, articles of constitutions, if you wish to do so. Does it sound easy or not? Again, I must say that if we have the nation fully restored, from that nation we can influence all the nations of the world on the political base. If we can make amendments on one of the articles of the Constitution to make it possible, we can do it overnight. One thing with the situation with respect to Hakjahan in Korea today, and then also with respect to the situation in Japan following the assassination of former Prime Minister Abe, is that there's this big push now to separate religion and state. That's been happening in Japan, and now also it's that kind of opinion now is gaining strength here in Korea as well. They're saying we have to find out just how far the influence of the Unification Church went. Was it just this handbag and necklace? Is that all, or was it much more extensive? We have to find out what their influence was within the political sphere in Korea, and we have to root it all out. There are people who are saying that right now, especially now that there is a leftist president in power. And so there's a rejection of religious influence by statists. I guess you could call them statists. Now, I believe, and I think this is correct. That's why I believe it. That religion has a role to play in a country's politics. That if you look at the Old Testament, prophets were the ones who would bring, they would receive God's word and then they would communicate that to the king and say, listen, this is what God wants. This is what God wants you to do. Or this is what God wants you to stop doing, whatever, okay? And today that function falls on the church. And so yes, we do need to exercise political influence, obviously, because we need to tell the political leaders, for one thing, communism is wrong. That's one clear message that I think Father's been giving ever since he started his ministry. Communism is wrong. Homosexuality is wrong. Transgenderism is wrong. And then the logical conclusion from that would be that the government needs to encourage two-parent heterosexual families. Two-parent families with heterosexual marriages. that would seem to be obvious, and that would be a solution to a lot of problems, not just the demographic problems, but drug problems and many other problems as well. So here, Father is talking about a political influence. That he's saying that if we witness, then restore, then we'll be able to amend laws and constitutions. He's talking about amending the laws of a country, or amending the constitution of a country, if we wish to do so. He says. He puts that caveat in there. Okay. Does it sound easy or not? Okay. Again, I must say that if we have the nation fully restored, from that nation we can influence all the nations of the world on the political base. If we can make amendments on one of the articles of the Constitution to make it possible, we can do it overnight. Okay. With so many nations coming under our ideology, even the communists will have to bow down before us. Do you want to be swallowed by communism or to swallow communists? If we can unite 3 other nations with our nation, the restored nation, we can work. So here he's talking about our nation. Our nation. In 1973, Father was talking about having a nation. We are going to restore the nation in Adam's position and in Eve's position and in the archangels. So Adam's position, nation in Adam's position, of course, Korea. Nation in Eve's position, of course, Japan. And nation in archangel's position at this point, of course, the United States. Later on, this turned to father, mother, and son. But at this point in history, in 1973, it was Adam, Eve, and archangel. Then our work will be easy. By training the people and by having them armed with the weapon of truth, they can never escape. They will not want to escape from God's side. Since you come from such faraway nations, so these are Europeans that he's meeting in Belvedere in New York. What I have said to you is something that I have never said to other groups. Of course, I told them something about engrafting, but not in such detail. Then engrafting here, this is the change in blood lineage. All right? Grafting onto a new lineage. Then are you ready to be engrafted to the true olive tree or not? And Jesus was also talking about this, right? Being engrafted onto the true olive tree. Jesus did not speak in terms of blood lineage, but that's what it is. When you're grafting, you're changing the lineage. You're changing the DNA in the tree. Are you ready to have your family, your relatives be engrafted to the true olive tree? As I have said before, at the time of the fall, there was separation between Cain and Abel. So by coming back together, by Cain's obeying Abel, those two put together can go beyond that level to the original position. Cain obeying Abel. Of course, you've studied principle, I'm sure, and so you know that he's talking about the foundation of substance here. Foundation of substance, in other words, the condition to remove fallen nature requires that Cain love Abel from God's perspective, that Cain place Abel as a mediator between himself and God, that Cain obey Abel, and that Cain multiply goodness through Abel. So he's talking about foundation of substance. So we can say that only by those two coming to one in harmony can they go over the boundary. And do I need to point out here about how Kukchinim has really succeeded in this aspect in a way that I don't think any other person has. In fact, I'm quite certain that no one else has succeeded in the Cain position as he has. You know. I think this is one of the first things that I noticed when I came to Sanctuary Church in 2014. You know, I resigned from the Family Federation 13, but then for a year I was in Korea, sort of doing a sort of freelance translation business and sort of tithing to the King's Ministry in Pennsylvania then. When I got to Pennsylvania and I saw I was able to observe how different people were interacting with each other, I saw that Kukchinim was really doing exactly what God would want and Father would want him to do as a Cain in opposition to his younger brother Abel. And one of the times that this was most evident would be after each Sunday service, after the king would speak. Then, different people would, they come to church to hear the king speak, of course, but I think for many people it was more like an opportunity to approach the king about some personal situation that they might have. Everybody had their situation. And after the church, he would stand there in front of the stage, and he would patiently listen, and people would come up and say hello, and he would greet people with a joyful heart, and he would allow people to take his time. And meanwhile, in the lobby of the church, lunch is being served. All right, and most of the people go out and they're eating lunch. Everybody's eating lunch except for the king. And he's there still in the sanctuary, talking to whoever wants to talk to him. And what's Kukchinim doing? Kukchinim is sitting or standing in his place, watching, and sort of watching over, protecting the king just in case something might happen. And he would never, I think I can be absolute on this, he would never leave the king in the sanctuary there and go eat lunch until the king was finished, and until the king went to the round table, Kukchinim would wait. He would wait. And that is an incredible model of attendance by Cain of Abel. And I tried it sometimes. I tried when I saw this, I said, well, I should be doing this too. But I got too hungry. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. So I would go and I would eat, and I would come back after finishing, and the king's still there. Frankly, sometimes I felt like going down and telling people, hey, come on, let the king go eat lunch. But he never, as far as I could see, he never shooed people away, saying, hey, you know what, I'm hungry, I got to go eat lunch. I never heard him say that. And I never saw Kukchinim leave the king in the sanctuary and go eat lunch before the king did. So by coming back together, by Cain's obeying Abel, those two put together can go beyond that level to the original position. And I think we still see it. Of course, we saw it in Father's, the anniversary of Father's passing. I can't remember the year now. Was it 2015? Could have been. Yeah, I think it was. When Kukchinim used his own money to prepare crowns for the second king and queen, and then during the ceremony of Father's passing, there was a point in the ceremony where he and his wife Chianim took the crowns and went up onto the stage and crowned the king and crowned the queen. And he used his own money to prepare those crowns. And I don't know how much they cost, but I'm pretty sure it's six figures, all right, in dollars, all right, at least $100,000 each. So that again is a model of attendance that Kukchinim has shown to the king, and he's continuing it now. He has, of course, given considerable financial assistance to the church, both in Pennsylvania and in Tennessee, and he's I don't know what he's doing with the church in Taiwan, but I'm sure he's doing something similar in Taiwan as well. So Cain obeying Abel, the two coming together. Okay. So when you want to bring your family, your relatives in the course of salvation, you must have them obey you and have them be united with you in hope and oneness, and then you in Abel's position and they in Cain's position put together can go beyond the boundary. Suppose there are Abel and Cain, even though they have already become one with each other, they have God above and Adam below. Abel is in the position to belong to God's lineage, so that means that those in Cain's position must become one with the person in Abel's position. So blessed central families are in the Abel position to our relatives who are not yet blessed. Through Abel, or through the person of purified lineage alone. So purified lineage, again, that's probably not how we would translate it today, but maybe it is. Anyway, alone you can enter that stage. God has nothing to do with the person belonging to the satanic side. In loving, he must love under him on God's side. In doing things for man, he is going to do things for people who are on God's side alone. So those who are in Cain's position, those on the satanic side, must reach God through these people. Again, Cain, one of the four parts of the condition to remove fallen nature, in other words, the foundation of substance, is for Cain to establish Abel as his intermediary to God. And then, excuse me while I take some water. Then Abel's responsibility in that situation is to receive God's love, add his own love to that, and pass it on to Cain. So that there's no reduction of love. There's no. The archangel in the Garden of Eden felt a lessening of love, or a reduction in the love that he was receiving from God when Adam and Eve were created. But the idea is, though, that the person in Abel's position, and Abel actually is in Adam's position, okay, and Cain is in the archangel position, receive God's love and take that love, add your own love to it, add your own love to it, and then pass it on to Cain. So when we think about how much love we have received from God, and then we ask, have I conveyed at least that much love, okay, at least that much love at a bare minimum to the Cains in my life? And of course that's a bare minimum, and I should be adding my own love to that. So I should be giving them more love than what I received from God. And that's a pretty tall order, because I don't know about you, I've received a whole lot of love from God. Okay? I've received a whole lot of love from God. So we need to perhaps think about that. How much love have I passed on to the people around me? All right, so in loving, he must love God's doing things for man to do. So those who are in Cain's position, those on the satanic side, must reach God through those people by loving those in Abel's position, by joining that person. Adam or Abel, because he's saying Adam or Abel because Abel actually is in Adam's position, remember, will be the first one to enter here, and by following him alone, the man in the position of the archangel can do the same. Broadening the scope, we can say any family in Cain's position must reach God through the family in Abel's position. Right? This family is so today then, the second king's family is in the Abel position, and so we are in the Cain position to the second king's family, to the royal family, we say. This family is ahead of families in Cain's position. By following the family in Abel's position, the family in Cain's position can reach the same level as the Abel family. The same applies to tribes and nations. Right? The same applies to tribes and nations. So God works always in concentric circles, starting with the individual, one man, and then the first sort of horizontal expansion of that is the woman, right? Eve, first Adam, and then Eve, and then you have husband and wife, then you have family, then you have tribe, then you have ethnic group, and then you have nations, and then you have world, and then you have the cosmos. So this is the horizontal expansion of God's providence. All right, so let's see here. The families at the same level. The same applies to tribe and nation. The relationship between the archangel and Adam is something like that between Cain and Abel. Yes, because the Cain is in the archangel's position, and Abel is in the Adam's position in that case, in the foundation of substance. Continuously here, he's talking about foundation of substance. So in that sense, the archangel should have obeyed Adam in order to reach God. He should have become one with Abel in order to reach God. One thing you must remember is when you put yourself in Cain's position and try to obey the person in Abel's position, then you are safe to reach God. In ministering, in other words, attending, all right? I'm certain that this is moshida. Moshida is the word that's being translated here, and today we translate that as attending, not ministering. In attending Master or Father, of course, and to the Messiah, you are always in Cain's position. Okay? Now here, talking about the necessity for Cain to unite with Abel, but of course he's implying, maybe not saying it outright, but implying that Abel has to make this happen, right? Abel has to make this happen. And elsewhere, Father has said that Abel's responsibility is to bring salvation to Cain. Bring salvation to Cain. Yes. In order for you to reach God, you must be obedient to the Messiah. In following the Messiah, you will go over the boundary of the individual level, tribe, nation, and worldwide levels. Before you, he has already done that by his own effort. He has already gone through the stages of the individual, family, tribe, nation, and national levels. As the person in the position of Abel, the Messiah must do things ahead of those in Cain's position. Okay. And without the one nation restored, can you ever dream of saving other nations? So, Father here, speaking to European members, is expressing the hope in 1973 here, expressing the hope that America can be restored. Well, there have been some ups and downs, haven't there? And today we got a lot of stuff going on. Basically, President Trump has declared war on former President Obama, and now there's kind of a political Armageddon, it looks like, going to begin here, where Obama has very strong forces. Trump also, though, is pretty strong himself. Although I'm a little bit worried that Obama may have more people with him in the government, at least, right? In the government. Well, for one thing, President Trump has been firing a lot of people, and so maybe he has not really cultivated a lot of support within the civil service, within the sort of the globalists who are within the government. But anyway, yes. So, but Father here in '73, expressing hope that America can be restored as the Archangel nation, and then also restore Korea and Japan. In 1973 was a tough time in Korea. It was really a time when it was difficult to have large rallies. It was during what's called the Yushin period, Y-U-S-H-I-N, and you can maybe look that up. I'm sure there must be a Wikipedia article on it. But in 1971, yes, 1971, it would have been, the president at that time, President Park Chung-hee, declared a national emergency, And under this emergency law, a lot of freedoms were severely restricted, including the freedom of travel overseas. It was extremely difficult for Koreans to travel overseas, and so, of course, there's a whole story in Father's autobiography about how he got out of Korea the night before this declaration was made, maybe just on the last flight out of Korea, and if he had delayed his departure by even 1 day, he probably would not have been able to make it to America. So this was a time when Koreans basically more or less could not travel outside the country. Park Chung-hee was very much focused on the threat from North Korea. Some people say he was simply using that threat as a way to maintain himself in power, but Father supported Park Chung-hee, and actually, I think, wanted Park Chung-hee to serve a little bit longer. Of course, Park Chung-hee was eventually assassinated by his own CIA chief in 1979. In 1979, so that ended that. All right. So anyway, so let's see. Where are we? Okay. Without one nation restored, can you ever dream of saving other nations? Let's suppose there is a big city with 10 or more churches. So my point was that Father wanted to restore America so that America could influence Korea and make things easier for the providence in Korea and also in Japan. Let's suppose there is a big city with 10 or more churches. If we don't even have one of our own, can we restore those churches? With one church of ours there, we must walk ahead of the other churches to show them how to go that way, to train them and teach them the truth. If the leader of the church would put himself in the position of the master, teaching them, serving and loving them, and doing everything for them, he can lead the people to the same goal. By your doing that, you can influence other churches, other communities, and the whole nation. In the days of Jesus, if the people of Cain's position had attended him and followed him, he could have influenced the whole Roman Empire, and around those nations there would have come Arab nations and Muslims. Of course, if I believe Father said elsewhere that Islam would never have appeared if Jesus had succeeded. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. They could not have come into being, and he could have restored the whole world in his lifetime. All right, well, there he says, yeah, they would not have come into being. Okay, and he could have restored the whole world in his lifetime. Now, there is an enemy of communism, and after that, very possibly, there's an enemy of communism. Well, he's saying that communism is the enemy. So we very possibly we may have to fight and win over the Muslim religion. So yeah, look at this. In 1973, Father's making a prediction that is certainly coming true today, right? We may have to fight and win over the Muslim religion, or in other words, Islam. Right? And I believe Father has said that Islam is actually a greater problem than communism. With that great task ahead of us, we have to strengthen ourselves by arming ourselves with the truth and zeal to work for the cause. With all those things in mind, you must know how great your responsibility is going to be. Where did the true olive come from? The true olive tree come from? In what way did it come into being? This world is satanic. So out of what lineage can it come? If all the lineages are stained, from what lineage can he be given birth? That is the great problem. Don't you think God must have been thinking how to shift the lineage, how to shift the satanic lineage into God's? If we were to describe it in detail, it would be a limitless story. This is only an outline of how God would shift the lineage. Okay, so now we get into some juicy stuff here, right? Let's go through it. God is the God of principle. And this is why we need to understand the principle. Without knowing the principle, we don't know God. I think that's something that we can say pretty clearly. Without knowing the principle, we don't know God. Apart from the law, the principle, God cannot work. At the time of the creation of man, in what way was it done? The creation was done centered on love. What kind of love? The love of God. And he could not but advocate to the world that the love of God is the first thing. The desire of fallen Adam was to perfect himself, to, let's see here, what's going on. Okay, I don't want a co-pilot here. Get away. All right, well, I guess I don't have a choice. Oh, here, is this it? Yeah, that's it. Okay, got it. They always want to make the software more complicated. Anyway, the love of God, because the desire of fallen Adam was to perfect himself, to perfect his love, or to complete his love. God wanted to abide in love. Adam and Eve also wanted to live there. God is the ultimate subject partner of love. Okay, a subject partner of love. Then we must call the people and tell them to come back to God's love. Love is all. Love is the only thing. In restoring God's love, you must be able to deny yourself, your family, and everything. Love alone is what you must take heed of. Without love, nothing could have come about. From love alone, creation was possible, and everything and anything came into existence. Love is something made possible through the action of give and receive. God is ready to give out his whole being, and man in return must be ready to give out everything to God. But here, let's always remember that fundamentally, Father teaches that love requires discipline. Love requires discipline. Just because Father says, oh, love is everything, doesn't mean that you can go out and just start, having sex with anybody that happens to be around. Man, woman, child, whatever. No, it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way at all. Okay, so just love requires discipline. I don't need to go through that again, I'm sure. From man's part, man must be loving God so dearly as to be able to deny his own life, to give his own life. You have a fallen life born out of fallen lineage, but you want to be restored to have true life born out of true lineage. If there be any constitution under the law of restoration, the first article must be the love of God. So the Bible said the first commandment should be to love God with all your sincerity, with all your heart, and with all your soul. That's the first commandment. The first article of the commandment in God's world is love. The second article should be, you must love your neighbors as you love yourself. With these two done and practiced, you can do anything. So here again, this is foundation of faith, foundation of substance. All right? What is foundation of faith? Foundation of faith is establishing the vertical connection with God. That's Abel. That's what Abel does. Love God with all your heart, all your might, to all your soul. And then what's the second commandment? Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. That's going horizontal. That was loving Cain. Love your neighbor as yourself. So, foundation of faith, foundation of substance. With those two done or practiced, you can do anything. When you are told to love your neighbors as yourself, it means you must love your neighbors as God would love them, as God would love you. Yeah. So Abel's responsibility is to love Cain with God's love, plus his own. Okay, plus his own. But at a bare minimum, with God's love. We are going to put this world of fears and confusion into order by practicing the love of God in this way. When you were given birth, were you born out of life or born out of love? Whose love were you born out of? Parents' love. Will you put God in the position of parents? Without your being one with God, you cannot be given birth, rebirth. So only by going through the person of God's love, the person whom God loves most, only by joining him can you reach God. And of course, he's talking about, himself. He's talking about the Messiah. He's talking about the true Father and the true parent. There are a vast number of individuals living in the world, but each and every person living must join the person whom God loves most in order to reach God. I have to go through Abel. Right? Cain cannot go directly to God. He must go through Abel. That's why his offering, Cain's offering, was not received by God. In order to reach God. God needs desperately those whom he loves most. But setting up the tradition through this man, God is calling the people to follow him or join him. Not just the people on the individual level, but also their families will come together with the family at the core, which God loves most. All tribes must join the tribe of the central mission, and all nations must join the nation of the central mission. That's the leading center family, tribe, and nation. That's natural, isn't it? Central mission. Maybe talking about providence here. Anyways, okay. Where does the restoration begin? We must restore the angelic world first. Isn't that true? However, can God trust the archangel? Even at the time when there was Adam with the archangel, he was so evil as to cause the fall. Therefore, God cannot trust the archangel. But without the person in Adam's position, can God trust the word of the archangel, the people in the position of the archangel? Since all people of the world are in the angelic position, God cannot trust them. By giving them words, training them, almost forcing them to follow him through a central personage, he would want to have the people restored back to himself. By giving them words, right? So by speaking to them, training us, to us, almost forcing them to follow him. Yeah. Since the sinful people killed the Son of God at the time of Jesus, who came in the position of Adam, God can never believe or trust the people in the angelic world. This time, however, however hard people may try, by denying themselves and doing everything for the sake of God, still God cannot trust them. Only if you can deny yourself as many times as you may be caught under persecution, under trial, will God be able to trust you. So, I remember Father speaking about trust. That trust is not automatic. Sometimes, if you've raised teenagers, you know that they will try this argument on you. Oh, if you love me, you must trust me. I'm going to a sleepover at my friend's house. Will there be boys there? If this is a girl, the daughter. Oh no, Mom. Oh no, Dad. There won't be any boys there. Will there be any drinking there? Oh no, Mom. Oh no, Dad. There won't be any drinking there. Oh, and if you love me, you must trust me. No. Fat chance. As if we were never teenagers, right? As if we were never teenagers ourselves. They think that they're the first teenagers in history. Oh my goodness, it's sometimes just gets ridiculous. Okay, yeah. Trust. God cannot trust them. Right? Yes. So only if you can deny yourself as many times as you may be caught under persecution, under trial, will God be able to trust you. So trust requires testing and persevering through tests. Then God can begin to trust us. It's not an automatic thing, and it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens over a period of years, over a period of decades. Because, we fail from time to time. We fall down, and what does God do when we fall down? He picks us up, and he dusts us off so that we can try again. All right, so we're going to stop there today, and we will continue next week with this very important series of talks that Father gave at Belvedere in 1973 to a group of European missionaries. And change of blood lineage. And this is what really our faith community is all about. We're not about just attending church every Sunday, although that is a good way for us to receive more of God's Word. And the fellowship is important, and we're able to grow in our faith through that kind of Word and through that fellowship and so forth. But that's a means to an end. Attending church is a means to an end. And believing in Father, that's also a means to an end. So what is the end? The end is the change of blood lineage. And the end also is then to spread that blessing to the people around us who are in the Cain position to us. So it's important that we understand what Father is talking about here, that we can apply it to our own lives now, more than 50 years after he first gave this talk. All right, so I will see you next Wednesday. In the meantime, I'll be back tomorrow with the regular King's Report, and I guess we will talk about that political Armageddon that's brewing between President Trump and former President Barack Hussein Obama. All right. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly. Yes. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast now. I'm doing it on my own today.